Next presentation is by teachers of Toronto District School Board and the Toronto District Catholic School Board as outlined CMD 18H 6.101 and 6.101A. I understand that Mr. Montemoro and Ms. Mekari will make this presentation. Over to you.
Good evening. My name is Anthony Montemuro, and I am a teacher with the Toronto Catholic District School Board. I am joined with Cynthia McCary from the ETT. Firstly, I would like to thank everyone for giving us the opportunity to speak here today. I work at Monsignor Fraser College in Scarborough. I am not here as a representative of the Toronto Catholic District School Board. I am here on behalf of my students. I am no expert on issues relating to nuclear energy. My expertise, however, is the well-being of the youth I serve. As an educator, I have several roles and priorities. Besides providing an education and preparing my students for post-secondary institutions and the workforce, another extremely important priority I carry is the health and safety of my students. I am here to continue this commitment of the health and safety of our children. I hope that we all share this commitment and that we value their health and safety. In schools, we prepare our students in the event of fire. We prepare them for lockdown drills. Tonight, we are seeking to prepare and protect our children in the event of a nuclear emergency. Therefore, we see it necessary to stockpile potassium iodide pills in schools within 50 kilometers of the Pickering and Darlington nuclear stations. My school, Monsignor Fraser College, is located 17 kilometers from the Pickering nuclear station. The problem we have are unequal levels of student safety. Since 2016, KI tablets have been pre-stocked in all schools within 50 kilometers of the Bruce nuclear station. Parents have also been provided information on the potential need to administer KI in the event of an accident. So this is the problem. Equal protection, we don't have equal protection for Toronto students. There are over 580 schools within the Toronto District School Board, totaling 250,000 students. Within the Toronto Catholic Board, we have 196 schools with over 85,000 students. We have 11 Conseils Scolaires Catholiques Mont Avenir Toronto area schools and 7 Conseils Scolaires Viamont Toronto area schools.
Cynthia McCary, for the record. So, TDSB request for KI stockpiling. Therefore, be it resolved that the board communicate with the CNSC with the request that OPG stockpile potassium iodide pills in TDSB schools located within 50 kilometers of the Pickering and Darlington nuclear stations. I'm happy to announce that TDSB approved a motion to stockpile KI pills in our schools last Wednesday. I have a photocopy of it here. The Teachers Union, ETT, also requests for KI stockpiling of the pills. Now be it resolved that the ETT requests the TDSB, the CNSC, and the Government of Ontario collaborate and ensure the stockpiling of KI in schools within 50 kilometers of the Pickering and Darlington nuclear stations. ETT has also approved a motion to stockpile these pills in our schools 2 weeks ago. Again, I have the letter in my hand. The city, Toronto support for protecting vulnerable communities and expanded KI distribution as well. The city has requested this. That motion has also passed. The city also supports transparency, public consultation, funding, strengthening emergency preparedness wherever feasible, protection of vulnerable communities, and world-class public safety. So it looks like TDSB, ETT, the union, and the city has approved these motions. The fact that this has happened indicates that this is a very important step in ensuring the safety of our students, and that's what we are here to request.
Thank you. Question? Ms. Vershi?
So thank you for coming. Is the driver for this recommendation or these motions because Bruce Power has pre-distributed KI pills in the 50-kilometer zone, or do you believe there is a risk that your students need to be protected against? Because if you've looked at the Provincial Nuclear Emergency Response Plan, they don't see any scenario where that would be really necessary, and you can always ask for those pills if you need it. So, but I just wanted to understand, what's the motivation? Is it because you want equality of treatment of students, and Bruce has done so, and that's why you think you need it?
Cynthia McCary, for the record. We believe that everybody, all our students, our own children, yes, it's about fairness, right? I believe that everybody, all the students should have it. It's not because Bruce has it, right? I don't think 10 kilometers is good enough. As Anthony said, his school is very close. Mine's a little bit further, but anything can happen. Accidents happen, right? We just want the safety of our students.
So in that case, why stop at 50?
Anthony Montevero, for the record, that's a good point.
So maybe I can ask staff to comment on where the 50-kilometer comes from. And we've had many interventions talk about 50 kilometers and how it's almost a best practice. And what got Bruce to do that?
Jerry Frappy, for the record, I'd ask Mr. Richard Tennant to discuss about other jurisdictions and where they are with 50 kilometers.
Richard Tennant, for the record. The Provincial Nuclear Emergency Plan currently defines the IPZ out to 50 kilometers, the ingestion planning zone. But Reg Doc 210.1 currently is the requirement for pre-distribution and stockpiling of KI. And it identifies pre-distribution out to 10 kilometers and stockpiling out to 50 kilometers with KI to be available within that 50-kilometer zone to vulnerable members of the public. Bruce Power has taken it upon himself to exceed that requirement. So those are the current requirements, and OPG is meeting them.
But I thought there was another requirement that people are pointing to in CNSC Reg Doc about dealing with schools. So stockpiling I can see stockpiling in rural community like Bruce would be different than Toronto. But I thought there was a requirement for stockpiling in schools which was over and above, just make it available. Tell me if that's not a requirement, because many of the interveners are actually making that statement. If you look at the second page here, in line with the need to protect children at greater distance, the CNSC post-Fukushima care distribution requirement include a provision requiring, etc., to make available to sensitive population. Okay, so it's a slightly different language here.
Jerry Frappy, for the record. So I believe the requirement is that there has to be a plan with respect to how it's going to be made available. And we don't dictate how that plan's going to be. In the case of Bruce, they've decided that it's better to put it right at the schools, that it's pre-distributed to the schools. OPG could decide to do that, or province, whoever is responsible for that stage. But from our perspective, we're saying that for the 50-kilometer zone, there must be enough stockpile, must be a plan for how it's going to be distributed.
OPG, why wouldn't you, at least to the school board, I don't know if you have a school, but to the school board, would you not go the extra mile, so to speak?
All right, Randy Lockwood for the record. I'm going to ask Scott Burns to speak to this topic. There was a number of questions, and maybe you can draw some of it together. Scott?
Scott Burns for the record. So a lot of points in discussion here, so I'll try and bring OPG's perspective. First of all, safety is a number one priority for OPG, and safety of people in our regions and surrounding communities are also our priority, including vulnerable persons and children. As mentioned, the strategy is a provincial jurisdiction for delivering KI. As stated earlier, before I get into some of the meat of this, I do want to say that beyond the 10-kilometer zone since 2015, we've had the Prepare to Be Safe website where, as Mr. Gregoris mentioned earlier, anybody can go on and order those pills. But I think what we're talking about is a strategy and changing the overall strategy, which is dictated by the province. And they may want to speak to this as well. But obviously, OPG and the municipalities are key stakeholders in this. And the chief medical officers of health for the province and local chief medical officers would have a say. So OPG would not generally make a unilateral decision on the strategy without consultation with those partners. Just a little note about my limited knowledge about the Bruce strategy, and if you've driven the Bruce community, you'll know that they experience a lot of road closures with inclement weather in the winter time, and the potential for closing roads is more significant in their area due to weather than ours, and I think my understanding is that's part of the rationale, but they would have to speak to that. However, generally with an evacuation scenario, which is highly unlikely, families would want to reunite with their children fairly quickly. And if there wasn't road closures, they would probably reunite with their children very early on in a scenario like that, which again is highly unlikely. I will state that, as mentioned, the Provincial Nuclear Emergency Response Plan sets out the requirements for the distribution of KI. Specifically to residents and businesses in the detailed planning zone, which we have done. We also have a new neighbors program in partnership with Canada Post, so anybody coming new into those zones, 3 times a year, we deliver pills to people that are new into that zone to make sure that everyone in that zone is receiving them. Going back to the PNERP planning process, so it was just revised in 2017, as you know, the master plan. And it is in line, as mentioned, with international standards. The detailed planning zone is the current zone. Again, the province will want to speak to this, but they are, as mentioned in part 1 of the hearings, they have undertaken to do a further technical study that will address some of these issues around zone sizes and protective actions. And as OPG has supported the new updates to the PNERP and intend to implement all of those, we're closely watching the results of that technical study as well. And if there's any changes or recommendations coming out of that study, that would be our position to implement those recommendations.
So I think to have an intelligent conversation, we need the province here. And I think that's not going to happen until tomorrow. So I hope you can actually tune in or come back. And those issues have been raised by many interveners, and we will address them when they're here, and we can have some pretty good conversation. You want to add anything to that?
Yeah, Scott Burns for the record. I should state that our strategy in and around the Pickering plant does include the assessment of the vulnerable persons, particularly pregnant, breastfeeding women, and children. And so we have 6 million pills stockpiled between the 10-kilometer and 50-kilometer zone to ensure that the people in the ingestion planning zone are protected in the unlikely event of an emergency. So it's not like there's not a plan for that. The province has taken that seriously, as has the City of Toronto, the Region of Durham, and OPG. The real question is, are we safe and are we prepared? And we certainly are.
Dr. Dimitri?
Thank you. A quick question for the interveners. Thank you for your presentation. You're speaking as groups of teachers. Do you have buy-in by your boards? Because there's going to be a lot of logistics for stockpiling, making sure it's renewed on a basis, keeping sufficient numbers, dealing with parents and consent, kids with iodine allergies, all these kind of things, from a management point of view? Like, this is driven by the teachers, but unless you get buy-in by your administrators and managers of the school board, I'm just curious, how would you pull this off?
Cynthia McCary for the record. The fact that TDSB has approved a motion, that is our board. Therefore, that's the school board, yes, TDSB.
Okay, that's I didn't understand all the acronyms. And for OPG, obviously we're going to talk to PNERP, but obviously PNERP has directed you on how to deal with stockpiling beyond 10 kilometers. So from your understanding, from where you sit, how would you get KI pills from where you're stockpiling it to a school? I want to see if you actually understand where this stuff is being stockpiled and how it would get to vulnerable populations. Even though it's a PNERP responsibility, they've probably directed you where to stockpile and how much to stockpile.
Yeah, Scott Burns for the record. So really what you're talking about is the actual execution of the plan in the event that it's required.
Yeah, so what physically, where are these stockpiles?
So
being
they
held?
they are stockpiled in pharmacies throughout the area. Ministry of Health has a significant quantity as well. Many of the health organizations are part of the planning process in terms of the execution of the plan and the distribution in the unlikely event that that's required. So it's all integrated into the health planning process, and all of those plans are in place and would have been addressed as part of the exercise that we had in 2017 from a health perspective.
Okay, and just a final comment, because I think it's apropos to the interveners and comments that have been made repeatedly that we pre-distribute in 10 kilometers, but that anyone that wants it after 10, beyond 50 can just ask for it. Well, I see this intervener asking for it. So, and I know there's all kinds of policy issues and how it integrates with the bigger plan, and it's a much bigger ask, but there's those optics, right? Anyone who wants it beyond 10 can just ask for it. This is an intervention that's asking for it, and so it'll have to be taken seriously.
Scott Burns for the record. So I receive your comments and appreciate the comments. Again, safety is number one priority. We're hearing, we've heard this sentiment throughout the hearings and our evaluation of some of the intervenor reports. We have heard that. We do respect the fact that it is a provincial jurisdiction and OPG can't unilaterally just make that decision. It has to be part of the provincial and municipal plans and regional plans. Again, we want this to be an evidence-based decision as well if we're changing the strategy. So my earlier comment about waiting for the results of the technical assessment, I think is prudent for the organizations involved. Thank you.
Okay, I think we'll pursue this further when they are here. So, no, unless there is a specific different question. Is it a different question? Okay, so we'll wait until, because I don't even know what asking for it means. Who delivers it? Do you go in and purchase? There's too many questions there that we will not be able to deal with until the Office of the Fire Marshal is here and some provincial authorities. So I really think we should defer it for tomorrow.
Randy Lockwood for the record. I very much agree, President Binder, that we do need the province here and other parties to properly address this. But I did want to stress that, as we said in our open presentation, we care about the community. So we want to see that we do the right thing here, and I echo what Mr. Scott Burns just said, is let's have all parties here, let's see what the technical study says, the evidence, and how best to execute, and not just go here and there.
Okay, thank you.